let's discuss the facial features, which consist of the ears, the eyes, the nose, and the mouth. First, we'll crochet the ears. There are 2 ears, both made using the adjustable magic ring. We crochet around the ring. Now, let's show. Start with an adjustable magic ring. Then work 2 chains as beginning chain. Next, crochet a half double crochet in the ring. Five double crochets. Then another half double crochet, 2 chains, and finally, make a slip stitch. After finishing, close the ring. Then leave about 25 centimeters of yarn tail before fasten off the yarn. And there you have 1 ear completed. Refer to the form and crochet another one. After the ears are crocheted, sew them onto the head, slightly towards the front on both sides, between rounds 7 and 11. When sewing, keep the right side facing forward. Now, let's show. Thread the reserved yarn tail onto the needle. Then press it flat and sew in the corresponding position. There's no specific method for sewing. Just make sure it's securely attached. Once sewn, weave in the ends. Also weave in the starting ends. That completes 1 ear. And that covers the ears. Next, we'll make the eyes. There are 2 identical ones. Crochet according to the form. After crocheting, glue them onto the head between rounds 10 and 13. Separate the 2 eyes by approximately 9 stitches. Align both ends of the eyes roughly with round 10. Separate them by 5 stitches. The top naturally curves. After gluing, embroider a small line segment on either side of the eyes as eyebrows. Now, let's show. First, glue the eyes in the corresponding position. After gluing, cut about 10 centimeters of same color yarn for the eyes. Secure it inside the head first. Then pull out the needle at the second chain from the edge. Embroider the eyebrows. Just embroider a small line segment. After embroidering, weave in the ends inside the head. Then embroider the other eyebrow in the corresponding symmetrical position. That completes the eyes. Next, we'll make the nose. Embroider between the 2 eyes. Now, let's show. Cut about 20 centimeters of same color yarn for the head. No need to separate the strands. Thread the needle. Then, on the corresponding position of the head, secure the end on the wrong side. Then pull out the needle. Wrap the yarn around the needle 5 times. If you want the nose bigger or smaller, you can wrap more or fewer times. Wrap the yarn slightly loose. After embroidering, weave in the ends to the wrong side. The nose is now embroidered. Next, we'll crochet the mouth. We will start with the foundation chain. Crochet along the foundation chain. Now, let's show. First, chain 10. Then, starting in the second chain from the hook, for the back bump, work 1x stitch single crochet. One half double crochet, 5 double crochets, one half double crochet, finally, 1x stitch single crochet, and 1 slip stitch in the last stitch. Leave about 20 centimeters of yarn tail before fasten off the yarn. Next, we'll make the ends. Thread the yarn tail onto the needle. Insert it into the same placement of this single crochet. Then come out from where the yarn tail is. Tighten it slightly. The mouth is now complete. Weave in the starting ends on the wrong side. Next, sew it onto the 2 rounds below the nose, with the starting point facing upwards. When sewing, pick the strands on the surface of the wrong side. The method is the same as sewing on the blossoms. Below, you can sew it on by yourselves. After sewing it on, cut out the lips according to the pattern. Then glue them onto the mouth. With the indented part facing upwards, align the bottom with the edge. Below, you can glue it on by yourselves. That concludes the explanation for the mouth. Up to this point, we've covered all the facial features. Next, let's make the hair. It consists of the upper part, the lower part, and the braids. First, let's discuss the upper part. Start by making braids. Then sew them in rounds onto the head. You can start sewing from the last round at the top, or from one round above the opening position. The upper part consists of 2 rounds. There are 3 to 4 rounds between the 2 rounds of hair. Now, let's show. Cut 9 yarns, each about 1.5 meters long. Then hold them together. Tie a knot at one end. Next, group the yarn into sets of 3. Divide them into 3 sections. Then braid them. You can braid it slightly loose. After braiding, tie another knot. Trim it. The braid is now complete. Next, sew the hair onto the main part. Start sewing from the corresponding position. First, weave in the ends inside the main part. Then fold the knotted end of the braid inward. Pull out the needle at the corresponding position. Then sew a few times at the beginning to secure it. Gently pull to tighten. When sewing later, pick up the 1 or 2 strands from the surface of the final round and sew. Then fold the braid 2 to 3 times like this. Sew to secure. Then fix it to the strand on the surface of the last round. Continue sewing using this method for pleats. Keep sewing. When you reach the edge, secure it at the edge as well. Then continue sewing the rest. If the braid is not long enough, fold the knotted part inside. You can braid another one. Continue sewing. Similarly, fold the knotted position inward. After sewing around it, continue sewing downward with the corresponding number of rounds spaced. Keep sewing down to finish this round. If the yarn tail is not long enough, Tie a knot and weave in the ends, then pick up new yarn and continue sewing. Then continue picking up yarn to finish the remaining sewing. Similarly, if the braid is not long enough, braid again and continue sewing. That completes the upper part of the hair. Now let's make the lower part of the hair. In front, there's 3 rounds below the upper part. At the back, there's 1 round below the opening, sew a round. After sewing a round, no need to sew at the front later. Only sew at the back head. The sides should roughly align with behind the ears. You can refer to the finished product for the hair shape, or you can sew according to your preference. Similarly, during the sewing later, if the braid is not long enough, you can braid more and continue sewing. After sewing, tie off and weave in the ends. That completes the lower part of the hair. Next, let's make the braids. There are 2 identical ones. I'll demonstrate the making method now. Cut 2 pieces of same color thread, each about 20 centimeters long, and set them aside for later use. Then, using the same color thread, wrap it around 3 fingers about 25 times. You can wrap as many rounds as you prefer here. Once wrapped, cut the yarn tail. Use the thread that were set aside earlier to tie a knot in the middle. Then cut along the middle at the bottom. After that, trim the hair to your preference in length. Finally, sew it onto the sides of the head with the yarn tails. Sew it onto the hair. And after sewing, glue 2 pom-poms in front of the braid. Now, you can finish it off on your own. That concludes the explanation for the braid. Up to this point, we've covered everything about the hair. Let's move on to making the hat. It consists of the main part, the eye swatches, the mouth, and the bouquet. Start by crocheting the main part. Everyone, crochet the first 12 rounds following the form. The stitch techniques and methods have been demonstrated before. After completing the first 12 rounds, proceed to crochet round 13. Here, I'll demonstrate using a sample. First, carry the yarn across to the 5th stitch from the end of the previous round. Pull up the loop. Thread the fabric through the loop. Tighten. Hook the yarn out in this stitch. Carry the yarn slightly loose. Then, crochet the stitches according to the form. When you encounter the carried yarn, wrap it into the stitches. Finish with a slip stitch. This completes round 13. Move on to round 14. You need to crochet chains to leave an opening. The method is similar to the head used for round 22. Following the form, continue your crocheting. Crochet all the way through round 15. After round 15 is completed, proceed to crochet round 16. For this round, pick the back loops only. The curly brackets indicate a group. Start with the first group. Skip one stitch. Crochet the stitch pattern in the square brackets. Into the same stitch, crochet 1/2 double crochet, 2 double crochets, and 1/2 double crochet. After that, skip one stitch, and crochet a slip stitch. This completes one group. Repeat this group, and crochet the remaining groups. After the final slip stitch, leave a yarn tail about 3 times the length of the last round. If there's an opening here, you can thread the tail onto needle. And sew it back to the beginning. Then sew it to the head. Align the opening position with the zipper. In front, along the second to last round. Pick up the strand on the wrong side surface, and sew them on hair. When you reach the opening position, pick up stitches, and sew above it. After sewing around the circle, reattach yarn. Sew the below one with the remaining 1 or 2 strands of chains here. Below, you can sew it up as you like. If you don't want to sew, you can apply glue to secure it. Just apply glue to the second to last round. That concludes the main part of the hat. Next, let's crochet the eye swatches. There are 2 identical ones. Both use the adjustable magic ring. Work around the ring. Next, crochet it following the form. After crocheting, leave a tail of about 30 centimeters. Then sew it onto the main part of the hat. Between round 6 and 13, sew the 2 eye swatches centered. When sewing, pick the strands on the surface wrong side. Sew them to the main part of the hat. Note the position of the half double crochets when sewing. They are all towards the lower left. Everyone can sew it up themselves. After sewing, glue the pre-made eyes at the approximate center of the eye swatches. That's how you finish the eye swatches. Next, let's learn how to crochet the mouth. It also uses the adjustable magic ring. Crochet around the ring. Crochet it following the stitch patterns in the form. After crocheting, leave a tail of about 20 centimeters and fasten off the yarn. Then sew it to the middle position below the eyes. Now, let's show. Press the mouth flat along the middle. Note the right side facing out. Then sew it below the eyes. Pick up the strands on the wrong side surface and sew. After sewing, weave in the ends inside the hat. The mouth is now completed. Next, let's make the bouquet. It's also made up of flower stems and blossoms. The crocheting method is the same as them on the overalls. Here we need 2 flower stems and 2 blossoms. Everyone just crochet them following the form. Both flower stems need to leave a long tail. For one of the flowers, leave a long tail. After crocheting, align the 2 flower stems first, with the right sides facing out. Sew them together. There's no specific sewing method required, just secure them. After sewing, weave in the ends. Then sew the blossoms onto the top of the flower stems, with the right sides facing out. After sewing, weave the tail inside the blossoms. Finally, use the reserved tail from the flower stems. to sew them onto the top middle position of the hat. Now, everyone can sew them on by themselves. That concludes the instructions for the bouquet, and that completes the instructions for the hat. Finally, we'll crochet the strap. Crochet approximately 1 meter of Romanian cord. The length of the strap can be adjusted according to personal preference. Note: the strap is crocheted with 2 strands held together. You can take 1 strand from the outside, and 1 from the inside of the small yarn ball. Crochet them held together. Leave about 20 centimeters of yarn tail at both the start and finish for sewing. Now I'll demonstrate how to crochet the Romanian cord. First, learn the method. Then crochet it. Here's the demonstration of the crocheting technique of Romanian cord. Start with a foundation chain. Chain 2. Then insert the hook into the top loop of the first chain stitch. Yarn over. Pull the yarn through. Yarn over again. Pull through both loops on the hook. Keep the hook still. Turn the fabric piece clockwise. Then, pick up these 2 strands with the hook. Yarn over. Pull through. Yarn over again. Pull through the both loops on the hook. Continue turning the fabric piece clockwise. Pick up these 2 strands with the hook. Yarn over. Work a single crochet. Continue turning clockwise the fabric piece. Pick up the same 2 strands as before, and work a single crochet. Repeat this method all the way through. Turn the fabric piece clockwise. Then pick up the 2 vertical strands on the above left, and work a single crochet. Crochet until you reach the desired length. Chain 1 to secure. Leave yarn tails. Cut the yarn. If sewing is needed, leave longer yarn tails. That's the crocheting technique of the Romanian cord. After the strap is crocheted, sew it onto both sides of the opening. Sew it on both sides of the hat. There are no specific requirements for the sewing method. Just make sure it's secure. Sew up and weave in the ends inside the strap. That concludes the instructions for the strap. Up to this point, we've covered everything about this bag. If you have any questions during the process, don't hesitate to reach us via our website. Susan's Family, supporting your handwork experience, sharing the joy of life. Thank you for watching. See you in the next episode.